Right, we'll reconvene the meeting and carry on to the next item, which is the internal audit activity update. Page 60. Janine, is this you again?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, but hopefully only very quickly. This report really just provides the committee with an update on our internal audit program in terms of the work that's been completed and the status of those, including recommendations and follow through. The review that's currently underway, which is the Business Continuity Emergency Management Review. I think field work was underway. Scott, we might have a draft report available, but it will be brought back to the committee when that's been reviewed and finalised together with staff recommendations. And just noting the forward work program, which has project management framework and an asset management review included in terms of the next two reviews. In addition to those, and in light of the revised risk statements and risk appetite statements, it's proposed that we do a refresh of our risk and our assurance mapping against those new strategic risks as well. So to see where we've had assurance activities undertaken, what they have covered, and where there are any potential gaps, which would then help to inform the future internal audit program as well. So with that, happy to just take any questions that committee members may have. Information provided.
Questions? David's had to leave the meeting, I think. No questions? Yep. Okay. Do we have a mover and seconder to that we receive this report? Was that? Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Jennifer. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you very much. That moves us on to, we've done the annual report compliance review, item 10.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So page 105 on the agenda, skipping over annual report station that we've previously had. So this presents for the committee a report from a GST compliance review undertaken recently by PwC, both in terms of looking at current practice, but also with a mind on the fact that we do have a financial system change. And so what are some of the matters that we need to be considering there? Pleasing in terms of the overall recommendation, which notes that Council has a high level of GST compliance and the risk areas seen at other organisations and targeted by Inland Revenue don't appear to be risks for Council. So last time a GST review was done in 2021, noting that most of those matters have been addressed by Council. So reports provided there along with management comments. Obviously there are some actions and follow-ups as a result of that, which we will pull into an action plan and be able to provide visibility back to the committee on progress with those.
Yeah, that was a great report, I thought, and we should minute those two key points, systems, because I thought that was really encouraging. Any questions?
So you're going to amend the resolution on the board? Or noting the comments about
yes,
robust
I think we should.
I agree. It's a good report.
Good comments from C. Positive comments. It is, very good. Right, do we have a mover and seconder? Jennifer moving. Thank you, Paul. All of those in favour say aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you very much. Key projects activity update. Page 107.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we've got a few projects included in this. I think if we just work through them in the order in which they're included in the agenda. First up, we have shovel ready. So Greg. Oh, sorry, just while Greg's coming to the table, just to note in terms of project reboot, we do have some additional information provided this time in relation to that project as we get ever closer to go live. Nikki Caruth from IQANZ will be joining the meeting when we get to that topic so that she can speak to their report. But we've also got Mandy Bradshaw online, who is the change lead for the program as well. Just trying to introduce some of that flavour of change readiness, change management that's through that program. But first of all, Greg.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. So presented from page 108 is a program update for our shovel ready work program, which does, as you know, cover infrastructure and restoration projects across a range of government funders. The program is progressing well, and you will see that there are several major infrastructure projects coming up in the coming season, specifically the completion of our asset rationalisation project, which many of you would have seen on our council tour, and also the upgrade of the Church Lease pump station to, which is our second installation of enclosed Archimedes screw pumps. You also note there that our vessel construction is underway, with the contract being granted and an update recently being circulated to some of our key stakeholders, showing materials on site and things getting underway. I would note that the overall program is amber, that we do have a couple of areas around budget to be working through, particularly related to our capital renewals program. So we're just working through both of those at the moment. And also we have had some issues around the rather horrid summer that we've had, particularly around our earthworks program and slowing down the work that we're doing on the foreshore east and west stop banks at the bottom of the Hauraki Plains. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to take the remainder of the project of the report as read, and we'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, Greg. Questions of Greg? Pamela.
Kia ora. Greg, can you just talk me through the leakage of the weir for Lake Kimahia?
I don't have the detail of that one, I'm sorry, but I can take that question away and provide an update to the committee.
And also just a bit more commentary on there are no other confirmed sites for restoration for the 280,000 of MB and Genesis funding put to this activity. Are you saying we've got funding but nowhere to spend it?
This is in relation to Lake Kimahia?
Yeah.
That's correct at the moment. Yeah. So obviously with these restoration projects, it does require a partnership between us and landowners, and it does require a degree of investment from landowners as well. So the team will continue to work through that, find opportunities as they can. But yeah, it can be a little bit hit and miss depending on the catchment and situation that we're working on. So that particular funding is obviously targeted to that area as well. So it does restrict our options.
Unfortunate when you have that you can't use.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Greg, you're aware this committee's got oversight for the investment vessel, and the project's now away. Are you able to give us any sort of an update? I just wonder whether, given the significance of the dollar value and the risk associated with that project, you shouldn't have that as maybe as an agenda item. Discussion or cover off, if you like, at each meeting, so we're actually fulfilling our governance responsibility.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. And in terms of the project itself, There are a number of aspects, not just the vessel build itself. Obviously, it involves a upgrade of our mooring at Mary Mary, and a number of operational activities also to prepare for the use of the vessel. All of that work is underway. In terms of the vessel build itself, there are no risks or issues that have been identified. So that's all going to plan. Obviously, we are closely monitoring that project to ensure that we are keeping on top of anything that might be emerging. We are also we've sent out some communication to a number of stakeholders to confirm the specifications and delivery. So when the vessel will be available for operation, to start to build that annual work program and look at what that demand is. Some positive responses so far. But I'm happy to provide a more detailed report to the committee at the next meeting.
Maybe just a follow-up question. Do you have a quantity surveyor or the equivalent marine surveyor signing off on progress payments as they go so that we know that work's being completed in accordance with the plan and that we're not paying for things that are not being delivered?
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Janine.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So I just had a slight side conversation with the chairman, which obviously Councillor Hughes was attuned to, in terms of in relation to the projects that are reported here. We do have the ability to have the key projects reference group operating in between formal committee meetings. And so would, yeah, very receptive to feedback from the committee around those activities where you might want more oversight or more frequent oversight in between committees. That would be the mechanism that we have for that. So I've heard vessel. The chair has also noted, just as we get down to the nitty gritty of reboot, that it might be an opportunity for more frequent touch points on that as well. But just to make that process and mechanism available for more regular check-ins around some of those key activities.
And just further to Councillor Hughes's earlier question, so we have our project manager is based locally in Whangarei, so he's got close oversight of what's happening, and we've also engaged a marine surveyor to ensure that all the compliance requirements are met as we make progress through that. So it's a benefit of having some specialist contractors as part of this project.
I don't know what the committee's view is, but I, for one, would appreciate a more frequent update on certainly the vessel and reboot, because they've been projects that have had a fraught history of challenge. And I think when we only meet 4 times a year, it's a long time going without updates. I suggest that at least it might just be an emailed report saying things are travelling fine. If there's issues that need to be reported, then maybe convene a meeting just to consider that.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, for the vessel itself, we have recently provided an email with some photographic updates to several stakeholders, so that could be available too.
Yeah.
So I think obviously we have our internal project management governance, which is a monthly reporting process anyway. This program status, but at a lower level. So that's something as a minimum that could be provided to committee basis.
And
Trigger points that may happen in between times that move that status.
particularly with the red status now, the coastal plan is close to Morris. There are no more questions of Greg. Janine, take us through reboot.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you,
you,
Mr.
Committee.
Chair, and I'll get Tracy Powery, who's the project manager for the project, to join us at the table as well. I guess in terms of the overall project status, so we are still reporting this as green. I do sometimes refer it to my favourite shade of Gramber, which is sort of that green amber. Where are we today? I think the reality is that we are on a very critical path to a go live date of the 31st of July which we are collectively committed to. So we will get there. There is some question as to exactly what's there on day one, as opposed to what will come over the next couple of months while we still have the project team in place to roll out further enhancements or developments, that type of thing, over that period before the project is disbanded. Being very cognizant of not leaving the organisation post-project with the legacy of a bunch of loose ends to tie up. So being very clear around that go live, post go live within the project, and then anything residual from that point on. I think so. The team are working extraordinarily hard, both WRC and the Infor team. Financially, we were very fortunate with the decisions made by the previous council around the contingency that's been made available to the program, which means that we are able to operate well within that. So contingency currently remaining and not committed. So the program would come under that. It's a there's lots of wood around. Yep. But with some funding then potentially available to continue to drive some further enhancements, deployment of the solution set that we have. We've got Nikki from IQANZ online. Thank you, Nikki, for taking some time to join us. There is the report that was done in March, I think, this year, which was following, I think what I referred to last time is we'd hit some speed bumps and we did a bit of a pivot. Nikki's report conveys it as a much more significant decision than that, which it was at the time. But I guess the overall impact that has had on program delivery, but does call out some additional areas of risk that it's always good to have those pointed out to us. Nikki and the team are currently working through another, I guess, post-go live readiness assessment, quality assurance review as well. But Nikki, if you're, would love to have you join us and speak to your report.
Thanks, Janine. Much appreciated. Good morning, everyone. I appreciate the ability just to, I guess, talk to the report. I'll take it as read, but like Janine said, the work that we did in March was to look specifically at the change to a key component of the solution and to consider how well the project had worked through the implications of that change and the risks around it. And you will have seen from our report that the work the project had done together with Infor to work through that change had increased our assessment of the likelihood of success, which was a really positive step. And it certainly moved a few things for the project into a much better position. There were some significant implications of it, of the change, in particular, the fact that we now have a two-phased go live, so July and August, which increases the level of work for the project. But as Janine said, the decisions previously made around contingency made that a workable option, and definitely the option to take and not to try and do it all at once. So useful there. There were some things that still remained from a risk perspective around key people, which has been a theme throughout the project, and reliance, I guess, on a very limited pool of technical and business subject matter experts to complete the testing for the FSMAR side of things. Some of the other risks that we had seen earlier, particularly around data migration, were effectively mitigated by the change that the project made. So that was really pleasing to see. And also pleasing to see the increased involvement of Deloitte around bringing some of their expertise, and most importantly, a significant improvement in relations between WRC and Infor, with changes in key personnel at the Infor end. So when we met with people in March, there was a significantly different feel to the conversations that we were having compared to our earlier reviews. So very positive movement in terms of working together, understanding each other, Infor taking WRC's concerns seriously and showing really good movement in addressing those. And as Janine said, we will be starting our field work for what we call our Go Live Readiness Review, which is effectively is the project in a good position to go live at the end of July? How is the last kind of planning and testing coming through? Where are there areas of risk and are they being appropriately mitigated? So we're starting that work now and expect to have a report back to the project in about 3 weeks' time on that, 2.5 weeks' time. So that's very live for us, and hoping and expecting to see some good things with how the project has been progressing in the sort of 3 months since our last review. So I'll leave that there, I think, in terms of just the highlights from the report. Happy to take questions.
Chris.
I've got a question which is probably directed more at Janine, but I'll ask it anyway. Given that we've got the new system will be going live 1 month into the new financial year. There's 2 parts to my question, I guess. We've had our discussions with the auditors this morning. I'd like to understand what their involvement is with the putting of the switchover process, carry forward balances, sign off on that. You probably don't want to have any more auditors around here, but the sooner they do that, the better, is my experience. And secondly, the auditability of the data, which is going to be in the old system, which they won't have really looked at this stage, and what's the plans around keeping that live?
Yeah, so through the chair, what our cutover planning enables is that effectively the 22-23 financial year will be wrapped up in our current system. So we're not using the new system until the new financial year. And so by and large, the timing allows us to actually complete a standard year-end process as we normally would in our legacy systems, and then we will start afresh. There'll be a little bit of double handling for some things that miss key cutoffs, but that will be reconcilable through data migration or through we do something here and we do it in the new system as well. So I guess from an audit perspective, that means for this year, they will be dealing with known. For next year, certainly there will be additional work that's required as part of the audit program to redo all of their systems testing and the like is the basis on which they will be able to actually plan the audit for the 23-24 financial year.
Thank you.
More questions?
Thank you, Nikki, for the report. It's been really good to have a good read through with the understanding I had of the project. It made sense, and I appreciate that. It's actually really clear. I don't have any specific questions about the report, but I do get the sense from the whole memo that it is something that is going to meet our needs for the most part, and I'm happy to hear that the contingency isn't all used up yet, and that we have, and you know, hopefully not all of it does have to be used, but that the scope is there to finish it well, because we're at that point where we've invested so much that it would be a real shame for our staff to have a bad experience with it, because we couldn't do that last 2%. Having been in a large organization before, where dealing with software systems that take you 50 minutes when it should be 5, really keen for the project to complete with as much intention as we set out with.
Yeah, I think the other part of that is the hypercare. So it's just to deliver, but the getting that hypercare right so people get quick responses. And I don't know what period that is. And there's commentary about how long that should go, given there's a 2-phase implementation. But I presume you've got on top of that. That's not my question, by the way, but.
Yes, we have. And I think we're looking at things like over that go live period, actually having key info resources on site. So that as issues come up, we're actually able to deal with them time. Whereas at the moment, we're dealing with time zone differences, which just add delay in. So again, things that carry a cost, but things that will make staff feel much better supported through that transition, getting up to speed, learning all of.
Yeah, and I support your comments. It's really great to get this report and get a higher level of confidence than we had last time, I guess. I've got a completely random question, and it could be you've got a simple answer or it's off the wall, but has there been a review of some nature to ensure the cybersecurity readiness or the security of the system against cyber attack? I don't want to do a review after we've implemented and find there was a hole in it. So is there some process to ensure that security, or an expert, or are you the expert, or what happened?
That's directed at me. Yeah. So we haven't done a specific technical, that would be what we would call a technical quality assurance review, or to look at the cybersecurity side of things specifically. However, Matt, my colleague who's worked on the technical components of the assurance that we have been providing, it is one of the things that he looks at, which is around what we call certification and accreditation of the tool set. So that security side of things should be covered off in that. And Matt's been pretty comfortable with the work that the WRC team have been doing in that space. It's not a specific question that we have answered in terms of cybersecurity in and of itself, however, and you may want to take steps to address that specifically, but WRC's internal processes do have standards that they expect products like this to adhere to, and we're mindful too that the solution has been in production, so in use for over a year now, and this is just the last kind of incremental part of that. So as part of the initial go live work, which we weren't involved with, we would have expected something to have been done in that space. Tracy may be able to talk to that a bit more.
The right one, that's that one. Yes, so what we've done through the project. Like here?
Yep.
Thank you. Yep, so through the project in the beginning phases, we've done work with Infor to review their standard SOC reports. So we've covered it that way.
And just one more. So one of the internal control features, if we about that from an audit perspective, that the audits features meet audit requirements. I guess that's part of the design, but sometimes some people will actually get the auditors to have a look at it. Maybe we don't want that in this case, but is that and sometimes you get an independent person who may be a little bit more fleet-footed, but is that, I guess it's a core thought process, but just ask the question.
Yeah, so we haven't done anything from an external advice perspective around that internal control. What is being provided through the project delivery, because of the integrations and the building of those integrations, are a bunch of reconciliation reports that give us assurance that the data here is actually the data that's on the. So that's sort of one of the key around that solution integrity predominantly. We will then need to go through, obviously post go live, regular checks in terms of that, and just the constant review of information that's being produced to make sure that it does actually equal C or A. Quality assurance real time as well. Great. If there's no other questions for Nikki, we do also just have Mandy line, who has provided some change management updates as well. So it would be great to get Mandy just for a quick run through of that information for the committee. Thanks, Nikki. If you've got a busy day, can send you on your way with that. But thanks again for your time.
Lovely. Thanks very much, everyone.
Yes.
See you later.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Janine. Yes, there are some slides in the pack around change management, and just thought it was important to give you some perhaps visibility and understanding of how the change management work stream works alongside the project management of the project. So the change management really has a focus on our people and how our people will engage with the change, understand the change, how we will build up their capability in preparation for go live, across go live and ongoing, and how we can really look towards transitioning to business as usual and what the operating model will be in terms of business as usual. And also that benefit realisation in terms of planning how that will work and what are the levers for that with the business owners and handing that over to them. You know, benefit realisation really depends on our people adopting the system and then utilising it fully. And the quicker that that can happen, that people can go through that capability and change process, then the sooner we can start to realise the benefits that we've identified. So a focus on change management is incredibly important. You know, it's not just about standing up the system, but it is in that actual business readiness of our people. I included in there a bit around our business readiness approach in terms of the focus points and then how we do our snapshot measures, and some results from our business readiness survey with key users, and also our business user sessions where we have brought people in, familiarised them with the system, got them hands-on in the system and got them actually working through some of our learning and support materials and getting their feedback so we can refine that and really understanding is the system fit for purpose.
Questions? Jennifer.
Hi, Mandy. Thanks for that. One question I had around the questionnaire and the user session summaries was for your pie charts there and such. What's the sample size that we're kind of going with there? So I get a bit of an idea of how big 8% is.
Oh, yes, sure. So the business readiness survey went out to 79 people. And the bus sessions was a similar number as well.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, I would hate for a software conversion process to lower engagement. So that'll be the thing I'm looking for in the way I evaluate project success as well, because I'm mindful next time we meet will be well into the BAU phase of just tweaking and such. So quite a different update in a way to all the other updates we've had. So yeah, thank you for this section just to get us ready for that.
Mr. Chair, Mandy, just looking at the user session summaries, I don't see any mention in there of business analytics. It's included in the software, which is going to be providing information in terms of analysing the business, which is going to be useful, obviously, to the LT and to the CE. Can you just cover off that briefly? What is it incorporated in the software?
I'll probably hand that over to Tracy, but just before that, in terms of the business user sessions, it was really around that core functionality in terms of the processes. We didn't start to look at any of the reporting in terms of bringing people in around that. We do have obviously walkthroughs and sessions as part of the development of the reporting and the analytics where SMEs are involved as part of that development, but we not in the same intent as the business user sessions. Tracy, would you like to speak to the analytics?
Yes, so as part of the delivery suite, we have an analytics tool called Burst. So that's effectively, there's an amount of standard content that comes with the solution with each of the modules, and we've also built that out further. We're also doing a lot of work in terms of pulling together the management reporting and financial reporting content as well. So there is the Burst solution is a very comprehensive analytics tool.
So can I just ask, is that part of the suite of
Yes.
software that's being delivered as part of Operation Reboot, or is that an add-on?
No, that's part of
Or
the
part
suite.
thing?
Yep,
Okay, thank
definitely
you.
part of the suite.
Any further questions? Looks like we don't. So thank you, Tracy. And thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mandy.
Tracy.
Kia ora again, councillors and members. So it's a bit of a story of two parts for you today. So just hitting the high points, I guess both projects for year end, the budget are predicted to be at this stage operating on a surplus. Councillors will, committee members will note that at the previous meeting, crikey, 3 months ago, there was a projection that they would both be substantially over budget. As I said at the time, I tended not to believe that. My gut didn't tell me that. So what we are looking at is 150K projected to have surplus budget in the coastal plan, 58 in the freshwater. Now that is as of the end of May. A month can be a long time. In terms of the projects themselves, first I guess discussing the coastal plan project. After 7 years, hopefully, fingers and toes crossed, next week council will pass a resolution recommending that that project be publicly notified. We are recommending to council that it be publicly notified in mid-August with a 3 months submission period. So there is a statutory period required under the RMA. We're going to be recommending to council that that is extended, given it is the first time we've notified a plan in over 20 years for the coast. So the coastal plan in terms of issues and risks is pretty much at the 11th hour of its gestation, with just an issue identified there just really around the timing of getting the papers in the council agenda, to be fair. We will have all but the accompanying section 32 documentation that'll go out with the agenda tomorrow. The section 32 information will go out on Monday for councillors, still meeting the statutory time. What people focus on is the actual policy document. The ancillary information is supportive of that, but that's not where submissions will be. The other matter there, turning to freshwater, it is, I would say, halfway through its process. So as such, you anticipate there will be a number of issues and a number of risks that are far more front and centre. I have identified the project issues for the freshwater plan there from paragraph 9 onwards. The team has had another resignation last week. The purpose for that resignation is an incredibly talented young policy advisor in the team who we'd just promoted to being senior policy advisor, had been given some of the more complex components, and her and her partner were offered a great opportunity to go and work overseas. So there are some things at the moment that you cannot plan for. The skills market is tight. We are aware that a major restructure had been shared with Ministry for the Environment staff, where over the next 3 years they will potentially be shedding 23% of their staff, which sounds like an opportunity, but that's over a 3-year period, and we're about to have new legislation. So to me, that might fix one problem but create many more. So at the moment in the team, the policy team of 12, we are carrying 3 vacancies. So again, quarter of the team down. We're augmenting that with external consultants. They don't work for love. So there is a price impact there. However, we are managing that well. But with our deadline, statutory deadline of December 2024, that the majority of councils will be working to, the reliance on external consultants, they will get to a point where they will say we can't handle anymore. Why I say the majority of councils, councils most impacted by Hale and Gabrielle being Tairāwhiti and Hawke's Bay, they have been given an extension, as I understand, of 6 months from the Minister to June 2024. Iwi engagement, or engagement as a whole, to be fair, but particularly iwi engagement has proved troublesome. As I've briefed the councillors, we are just going through a round of committee engagement, and total number of attendees you can count on one hand. In some areas, and we have Councillor Maren Cookson online, they outnumbered community attendees in one of the hui, which is pretty unheard of. And talking with Councillor Cookson late last week or earlier this week, he made a pretty good observation that the community we're actually wanting to talk to is just pretty tired. You know, they've got a lot going on. This is going to be of significant impact, but you know, they're worrying about the rain and the sun more so than what is going to be a significant matter. In previous policy projects where there has been disengagement, I should say, it's because people want to see the words on a page. That's what gets people engaged. They don't just want to talk nebulous, fluffy clouds, and you know, they want to see the words on the page, how it's going to impact me. However, in terms of our community engagement, we will be running additional meetings in July, touching back in with particularly Tikawari, Thames, Tuakau and Taupo, and I remember all those because they start with T. And we'll be having those meetings in the evening. The staff still have a trajectory, so myself, my principal advisor, and one of our consultants will be facilitating those sessions. So we've heard people would better want evening sessions, so we'll see if that pulls people in. Iwi engagement is challenging, continues to be challenging. In paragraph 13, I've noted there, we've got a 3-pronged attack. Planned engagement needs to be augmented by what I've called responsive, opportunistic and agile engagement. And we're also taking that response with our community engagement, but we are taking all opportunities that present themselves. I would like to draw members' attention to the comments I've made in paragraph 22. iwi engagement continues to be a challenge for both ourselves and for iwi. We'll work in partnership to ensure that the engagement is genuine, but there is a careful balance to be navigated to ensure that iwi are feeling listened to and heard and not hurried through the process, while at the same time the project team are being driven and are very cognizant of the job ahead of us. In terms of mitigations, I have got, am attempting, I should say, to schedule meetings with our Māori constituent councillors who can assist us to address particularly the conversations around the Freshwater Committee and establishing that. Council in putting its committee structure together late last year said we'll put a placeholder in, and when the time is ready to have the conversation, let's have it. So that's my job in July, to work with our Māori constituent councillors to bring something back to a workshop for council in August, so we can have that committee hopefully running by October. And for the first time since I've reported to this committee, I've managed to get the budget information in the document as opposed to on slides. And I think just the one thing I will highlight is once the coastal plan is notified, it has a statutory timeframe that it must comply with. And I think from a risk and assurance perspective, it's probably less risky for council because it goes into a very statutory navigated process. So the oversight that this committee would need to have to that process, I think, diminishes, but definitely there should remain the focus on freshwater. Thank you.
Questions?
It is what it is, but I just want to give the committee the assurance that, look, we're trying to shadow box and mitigate where we can, but we aren't magicians or creators of time.
Chris.
I'd just like to compliment Tracy on being able to deliver within budget. I think that's an excellent effort in this day and age. So congratulations and keep it up.
Just in response to that, one of the main reasons we've been able to do that is because we've been assisted by pretty spectacular management accountant from Janine's team, who's given us the tools that we haven't had before. If you'd asked me some of the questions about budget 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have at my fingertips what I've got now. And that to me actually has been a real benefit of having to bring these projects before the projects reference group last term, because the chair and previous committee members did ask some tough questions that I didn't have answers for. I'm confident now that I could answer those with information at my fingertip, thanks to Janine's team.
Tracy, what's the impact if we do not meet the statutory deadline?
Yeah, look, that is something that I know Chris and a number of his other CEOs down in Wellington are having conversations with the ministry about. We're also having conversations that once that deadline happens, basically we'll all line up in front of the Freshwater Commission to have our planning documents heard. So we're kind of saying it doesn't make sense for everyone to meet that deadline and then be told, potentially be told you might have to wait 6, 7, 8 months for the Freshwater Commission to start their process. So there's a few light bulbs going off. There's a few, well, could you do things earlier? And I'll just remind the committee, we're on an October trajectory, knowing we won't meet that, but giving us time. At the moment, there is no statutory recourse. It is really reputational. It is a provision in the RMA, and we would not be complying with the RMA as an organisation. But as I've always said to council, it's too important to too many people to have a half-baked scone. Is probably the best way I can explain it. So if we need another 3 or 4 months to do the job properly, we've got the reporting mechanisms that we have where we can go to the minister and ask, with council's endorsement, of additional time noting that we don't just want it to want it. We have been trying to hit a trajectory. I've always said that I would probably make that call in February, March next year, because that would give us enough time to have the conversations.
Warren, you have a question.
Just more so a comment, thank you. Yeah, Tracy, just thanks for taking on board the feedback that Robbie and I have given you around the attendance of those meetings. And I've also spoken about a bit more in the radio media around, and just following up on that, I did hear a lady, and I'm not sure who it was, but she was on CFM this morning talking about the water policy and that sort of thing, and the meetings coming up. So yeah, just a heads up, and thanks for getting that out. At least it's coming through the Coromandel Thames community now, so hopefully we can get some more attendance at those meetings. Thanks.
And just a final comment, we will do this additional piece of engagement committee, but there is only so much you can do, and you'll need to get on with the job.
Thank you. If there are no more questions, can I have a mover and seconder for the resolution to receive the report? Jennifer? Chris? All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to annual leave management, wellbeing and health and safety indicators, page 138.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I get this one for you this time, but just happy to do a quick whistle through the report and then take any questions or observations from committee members. So we note there in terms of annual leave hours, so number of staff holding greater than 280 hours has increased slightly from when we last reported in February, with the number of staff with the 240 remaining about static. I think the list of who has those hours is changing slightly. I'm very pleased to say for the first time I'm not on it. So we'll mark that one down as a success. Sick leave, we note a sharp decrease in sick leave taken in April. I suspect that is largely influenced by the statutory holidays, school holidays and the like over that period, which will have seen staff at home taking a break and the like. We're certainly seeing a recurrence of flu and COVID impacting through our people, resulting in absences. So those things underlying are very much alive and well for us. Noting that we've had also the access to the flu vaccination provided for our staff, with a number having taken up that opportunity. In terms of health and safety indicators, so we've seen quite a marked increase over the last couple of months in near miss reporting, which is really pleasing to see. So staff awareness and capture of those near misses, which can obviously then result in corrective action being taken. In terms of the information that goes to council, the work that's been done around the workplace psychological harm is called out for the committee's attention here, with the risk statement noted. Now, I note the risk rating, so raw risk rating is high and a residual risk rating of medium. I think across some of these health and safety risks, there is a need to calibrate some of those risk assessments back to our overall risk framework. I think we saw it in the previous risk management report, where our common risks were still sitting at medium. I think in terms of the number of controls that we have in place around psychological harm, the reality of that is possibly lower than medium, but acknowledging, you know, worst case scenario is a catastrophic outcome, which is probably what's driving up that higher residual risk in this space as well. And then finally, the report just notes participation or uptake of the employee assistance program, noting that that's moved up slightly, so the trend is slight increases, but still relatively small numbers, and within sort of those benchmark tolerances for all in that space.
Questions of Janine? Jennifer.
Thanks for that, Janine. That's good to see people using EAP. My part was around the annual leave balance. It's been good to see it trending down. I recall a meeting last Australium where the strong push for this came from. And so, yeah, gradual, but progress. I would be really keen for a push to get leave booked. I noticed there's a lot of zeros in that column, that table. And so, especially for the 20 or so people over 280 hours. So, mindful, there's a time every now and then when CE and DLT will do a push. So I just think that would be, and obviously there's a seasonal aspect to it, as we can see in the graph. Getting things booked is kind of that first step.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, one of the actions that should be coming off staff with more than 240 hours in agreed leave, which would then translate into
The table.
seeing it actually being booked, which helps bring those reported numbers.
Thank you.
No more questions. So I have a mover and second. All those in favour, say aye. Three, carry. Estimates and judgments.
Really exciting stuff. So thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the report that we prepare for the committee in terms of assurance over those key numbers that go into our financial statements. This is the first cut of it. We will come back to you at your next committee meeting as well with some final assessments. Particularly, we've done an interim valuation, such as around leave, but also significantly in relation to the infrastructure asset reval. And so I've noted a proposed process for that where suggested that the chair and deputy chair of the committee, along with Paul as the other independent member, can review that revaluation prior to it coming to the committee for its full consideration. That's consistent with what we've done previously. It just allows a bit of a deeper dive into it and some assurance to come to the committee based on that. And so that's a topic that is alive and well at the moment with discussions between council staff and the valuer around some of those key values. In terms of council's other property owning, so we only really have a very small portfolio in that space these days, with concentration really being around our Paeroa office and depot. The numbers reported in the report were based on verbal feedback from the valuers. We have received the final valuation report on that, and where we'd indicated about a $200,000 movement, it's about 250. So within COE of what we've reported there. In terms of our forestry assets, so the 2 forestry blocks that council holds as part of our soil conservation activities, they are subject to an annual valuation. As those forestry areas have just matured for another year, we're seeing a minor uplift in values there. Provision for doubtful debt, so they have all been reviewed based on debt as at the time of the report, so 30th of April, with adjustments noted against those. We will check in again in terms of those debt levels as at the end of the financial year, with adjustments made accordingly based on the collection status or activity associated with each of those accounts over 3 months. Employee entitlements, so our long service leave and gratuities on retirement, which might be something that councillors have some questions about, again valued on an interim basis, noting changes really in those market rates and the like. Interest rate derivatives, we've just noted a positive outcome there in terms of the value that those derivatives are actually creating for us. Having derivative is effectively fixing the interest rate that we pay in relation to our borrowing program, and in an environment of increasing interest rates that is favourable for us and is reflected through the valuation information there. And then finally, I think in terms of our investment in council-controlled organisations, so one of our remaining ones is in relation to Regional Software Holdings Limited, specifically around the current Iris software. RSHL as a company has landed on a policy for the impairment of that asset, given that there's a replacement for that in development but implementation now. And so we are aligning our impairment of our investment in RSHL with their own policy around the effect of that asset. Probably just a new one that we've noted in here is around onerous contracts. We have done a review of all of the contracts that council holds to ensure that there are no onerous contracts or leases held that we should be providing for within our financial statements.
Thank you, Janine. Any comments or questions?
Janine,
Jennifer.
got a question, and it's about the forestry assets. Why do we hold them? You said something about soil conservation river control reserve. Just wondering, benefit do we gain by holding these two small plots?
So Greg's sitting over there.
Mr. Chair, so both of those forestry lots form part of the Waiho Valley scheme. The Waiho Valley scheme was our most modern scheme, I suppose, put through in the 90s, and it was quite unique in that it took a whole of catchment approach, and what that recognised was there was benefit to the overall scheme and flood risk management to look at areas of the catchment that should be retired and protected to enable, I guess, better overall outcomes for the scheme performance.
As a follow-on, I guess my question is more, why would Waikato Regional Council have to own them? For example, we could just, top of my head, transfer them to the district council. And if we do hold some, do we have plans in future of holding more for similar purposes? Because it just seems like if there are things that we do which are not of great significance or a large part of what we do, then there's a way of passing that on. Then it's one less thing that has to be talked about and evaluated and assessed.
Yeah, it's a fair comment. So in answer to your last question, no, I don't believe there are any plans to take on more forestry blocks. I guess in the area of ownership, what would be important is ensuring that the outcomes that were intended through the purchase in the first place were sustained. I think that's really important in terms of soil conservation, catchment protection, that kind of thing. So, but I don't believe the issue of ownership models has been explored too deeply in recent times.
I just think it might be worth looking into in case somebody else is able to do similar things who also has similar assets. Could get an economy of scale of managing those things all together.
Reasonably common for regional councils to have forestry holdings, and these are very small in comparison to other councils.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I totally support what the council is doing. It generates revenue for the council, which is great. It subsidises rates to a small degree. And I've also been encouraging Greg to find some more land that we could use for commercial plantation, which would also generate revenue. But I don't think he's been able to find any to date, which is unfortunate. So I totally support what the council's doing.
Yeah, and through the chair, not particularly down on it. It just looked to me as kind of a small thing. So either we'll do more of it, as Chris says, or do less of it, was my theory. But I'm not attached either way.
Robbie.
Yeah, I just want to back up what Chris said. That generates tax rate relief for Waiho Piako. So that was a part of the reason. It was also soil conservation and rate relief because it was going into pine harvesting. So there was a benefit to the community for having those there. So I struggle if we gave them to someone else to manage, then that value would not be coming back to what it was designed for, to give rate relief and soil conservation to the targeted ratepayers that actually own those assets. Thank you.
Okay, there aren't any more questions. I have a mover and seconder for the resolution, please. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Chris. All those in favour say aye. To the contrary, carried. Thank you very much. Now move on to policy review update, page 154.
Mr. Chair, I was just going to get Connie Chittick to talk to the committee about this report. So Connie is my principal advisor. She does a lot of work in terms of this policy space, but also around the fraud risk management. So she'll pop up again in the public excluded on that one.
Welcome, Connie.
Thank you. So just this report gives you an update on the review of council's policies. And those in section 2, the ones that were required to be approved by this committee. So just a couple of issues, I guess, that we had with publishing the report. James, thank you, James, has just handed out Appendix 2 that was missing. And in the actual sensitive expenditure policy that's in Appendix 1, from page 159, the track changes are missing. So our apologies for that, but I will highlight some of those changes. So with regards to the sensitive expenditure policy that was due for review in May, there are no major changes in it. As noted in the report, there was quite a major review in the last time with the Office of the Auditor General advice. And so the updates in this one are really just around some clarification points that have arisen from questions from staff and some changes in internal processes. So just the 3 points changes I will raise. Page 161, there was these 3 are actually inclusions, and they were things that were already happening. So we're just putting them in there for clarification. So 161, just the inclusion of any travel, domestic or international, for the CE is approved by the chair. Page 162, just around purchasing cards. I've just amended it from that it did say they should not be used, but they're actually not able to be used for cash. That's and if they were need to be used, it would have to be arranged through finance and services and approved by the director, and that has to be arranged with the bank anyway. And page 165, alcohol purchased for a staff function. Essentially, that needs the purchase of alcohol for a staff function needs to be approved. Oh, sorry, the purchase of alcohol beverages using council funds is not permitted, and unless director approval. And I'll probably leave it there unless you'd like me to go through Appendix 2, but otherwise.
Any questions?
Just a small point, if we're purchasing alcohol for consumption on site here, do we have somebody who has a respective licence that's required to enable the council to serve that alcohol?
Actually know that. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't believe so. In terms of it would be in terms of celebration event or something like that. So the occasional very rarely happens, to be fair.
Well, I'm raising that because we used to be in the habit of having staff drinks on a Friday evening. We had to get somebody licensed before we were allowed to serve them, otherwise we're breaking the law. And so I'm just signalling
Yeah.
it's something which you probably should
So,
look at.
yeah, cool, thank you. There's a social club, and then so this isn't referencing social club, it's really around the council funds and how we operate, but yeah, we can. Thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, do we have a mover and seconder for the resolution to receive this report? And, sorry, Pamela?
Just a question on the gift registry and the $50. Was that, I seem to recall us having a conversation recently about that value. And had it gone up, or what has set that $50 threshold? Is that something in?
Most organisations use 100.
I was gonna say, I think we had a conversation about this recently, so.
When the RAG came and presented on sensitive, we discussed that.
Yeah, so I just am wondering if $50 is where we want this policy to lie, or if we think 100 is more appropriate. I'm just
think-
looking for some guidance.
I think it would be quite within your rights to lift that to
Think-
be in line with.
Cost of living crisis, you can't get much for $50 anymore.
Yeah, you can't get anything for 50. So what would you suggest?
I'm trying to recall that conversation. Was it 100 that was,
My recollection was it was 100.
Yeah.
I'm looking to Paul if you've got any other relevant reflections on.
Thing is, it's an area of sensitivity.
Maybe threshold for FPT used to be $200. I don't know what it is now per staff member. I wonder whether that should be an appropriate level. That's just because it's in legislation.
Also, I'm just looking at a draft document to do, because we're having a workshop soon on conduct. And it's only a draft, but it is more 100 side.
Anything, there needs to be consistency across our policies. So if that's, yeah. So it sounds like $100. We've all had a bid.
Any advancement?
Any advances? Yeah.
Thank you, and we'll look to make sure that there's some consistency across. It is that individual gift, but then the cumulative value was as well, that bunch of 50s. What is that view over? Well, so we can look at bits of that.
Right, because I was going to say if we raise the 50 to 100,
raise
then
the
the next
100.
100 is a bit moot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cumulatively can increase above the level that you get the exemption for FPT, which is something which you've got to be aware of.
We could look towards figuring out as an organisation living, like for example, difference.
Have a ended. An amended resolution. Members happy with the one that encapsulates what we've moved and seconded. Thank you, Pamela. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Elected members' interest declarations.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this was one of the matters arising from the last council meeting in terms of having visibility and transparency of those declared interests, as well as the elected members' gifts register. So that information is published on our website and includes information around the date at which it was last updated, Members are asked every month to confirm that. So there is a regular process for the update of both interest as well as those gift declarations as well. And just for visibility, rather than you all having to pop onto the website, we have provided the list of current declarations for the committee's information, with the intent that we just bring that back as a monthly process, so that there is some visibility through this forum of that information.
Mr. Chair, I just note that the interest register for myself is incorrect, so I will be following that up with democracy.
That's one of the real benefits of actually making sure it's in papers regularly. Because it's only seeing what's there, because they are often wrong. Okay. We have a mover and second to receive that report. Thank you, Chris, Jennifer. All those in favour say aye. Contrary, carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the public agenda. So we now need to pass a resolution to move into PX. I have a mover and seconder. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Paul. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. You let us know. Start again.